Have you ever thought about how many decisions in your life have been shaped by the opinions of others? How many times have you hesitated to keep going for fear of what people will say? What if I told you that much of your emotional stress is directly related to being validated with the invisible prison of wanting to please, to be accepted? The truth is uncomfortable, but liberating. The more you seek external recognition, the more you lose inner control. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. It's never going to be enough. The good news? There is a way out. And no, it's not about running away from people or pretending that nothing concerns you. It is about something much more powerful: awakening inner sovereignty. In this video, you'll learn how the ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca can help you build an armored mind and a free heart. Let's dive into a journey of mental clarity, emotional distance, and personal empowerment. And if you are willing to stop living according to other people's opinions and start living according to your truth. So stay with me until the end, because it can change everything. Emotional dependence is like living with an invisible remote control in the hands of others. When someone says something positive, you feel good. If you're ignored, everything falls apart. It's a grueling cycle of ups and downs where your calm depends on the next validation from the outside. The problem? People change, they get distracted, they have their own problems, and if you depend on them to be happy, you'll drift forever. Have you ever caught yourself waiting for a response on WhatsApp as if that defines your worth? This feeling of fear, of waiting for the other, says much more about our guilt than about the other person himself. Emotional dependence puts relationships on a tightrope act, where every wrong step feels like a threat to their well-being. And to live like this is not freedom. It is captivity. Philosophically, Epictetus once said, "It is not the things that bother us, but the way we interpret them." When you give someone your feelings, the slightest glance turns into a storm. Modern Stoicism suggests the opposite: to save control over one's own life. If someone compliments you, great. Otherwise, it's not a big deal either. Because their value does not change with the vibrations of the world. The training of this emotional autonomy is not indifference, it is maturity. Start with small tests. If you feel the need for recognition, stop and ask yourself, is this coming from my nature or from my need? Meditation, journaling, and even Stoic reading exercises can help. I recommend starting with the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Each page is a reminder of inner strength. Living trapped in the need for acceptance is like wearing clothes that others choose. True liberation begins when you realize that inner comfort is worth more than all outer assumptions. And if you continue on this path, you will discover that true peace consists in being free even in feelings. And that brings us to the next point: invisible chains. Not all prisons have iron bars. Some are made up of expectations, the need for recognition, and the fear of rejection. These are invisible chains that bind you to the behavior of others, and even worse, you don't even realize you're chained. It sounds like an exaggeration, but how many times have you censored yourself for fear of not liking yourself? Or is it no longer authentic to integrate better? The truth is that most people live conditioned by old experiences. Maybe you grew up trying to please in order to receive love, or you learned that you will only be accepted if you have suppressed your desires. This creates a silent pattern of self-extinction, in which rejection becomes a constant ghost. And that's when the fear of disappointment was born, the fear of disappointment, currents that restrict emotional freedom. These connections are not visible, but they manifest themselves in the little things: avoiding conflict, relying on someone else's reaction to feel good, not being able to say no without guilt. Stoic philosophy teaches that recognizing these chains is the first step to breaking them. Because we can only free ourselves from what we can name. As consciousness expands, captivity loses its power. A practical tip: start writing down a situation every day where you canceled yourself to please someone. It may seem small, but this exercise reveals deep patterns. And with that clarity, you can start choosing differently. Decide with a clear conscience. Choose firmly. And so, little by little, you begin to exchange the prison of recognition for the ease of authenticity. Being emotionally free does not mean living in isolation, but living fully, even in the midst of relationships. And when you start breaking these invisible chains, something awakens in you. It is a call for more. And the next step is to face a common trap: the illusion of external value. Many people believe that the value of a person depends on what others see. And that's one of life's biggest emotional mistakes. You are not more valuable because you have been praised, nor are you less valuable because you have been criticized. But if we get used to measuring self-esteem with the master of others, any lack of recognition will become an inner abyss. And that exhausts us. Imagine living like a shop window, always trying to look good, always looking for an appreciative look, a positive comment, a like that alleviates the uncertainty. It's exhausting. Because external value is fleeting, fickle, and never really satisfying. As Seneca said, true happiness is to enjoy the present without worrying about the future. And the future often waits for applause. It's not bad that you like to be recognized. The problem is that it has to feel complete. If self-esteem depends on external factors, then any criticism destroys. But when it comes from self-knowledge and inner clarity, you become steadfast. It may swing outwards, but inwardly it stands firm. And this coherence is built through practice, not words. Want to get started in a handsome way? Every time someone congratulates you, I thank you, but ask yourself, does this change who I am? And if you're criticized, ask the same question. You will realize that your essence does not move with the opinion of others. Reading excerpts from the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius can help to consolidate this perception. They are words that call you back to the center. You are not the mirror of others. He is a complete being who thinks, feels, chooses. And when this truth takes root, the desire for confirmation dissolves. From there, a silent force was born that brings you closer to true inner peace. And that's exactly what ataraxia is all about: an unshakable inner peace. Ataraxia is an old word, but what it stands for is more relevant than ever: the ability to maintain composure even when everything around you is falling apart. Imagine living with emotional stability without getting carried away by all the criticism, all the bad news, all the twisted looks. Does that seem unattainable to you? That's not the case, it's the training. It is applied philosophy. It is self-control in its purest form. The Stoics called this inner strength. Peace does not arise from the absence of problems, but from the absence of internal problems. Marcus Aurelius faced wars and betrayal in the Roman Empire, and yet he wrote about keeping calm like tending to a garden. Ataraxia is like an invisible shield in this context. It does not prevent the pain, but it prevents the pain from destroying you from within. In practice, achieving this serenity requires a filter: the distinction between what is under one's control and what is not. The famous dichotomy of control. You can't control what the other person thinks, says, or does, but you can control how you react. It is also liberating. And as Epictetus said, do you want to be invincible? So don't fight against what doesn't depend on you. To cultivate this peace, try to incorporate some alone time into your day. It doesn't even have to be something mystical. It can be 5 minutes early in the morning to drink coffee without a cell phone. Or at night, by thinking about their reactions without judging them. In these moments, inner peace arises. And a good book to understand this in a simple and effective way is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Ataraxia is not cold. He is a serene presence. It's about looking at the chaos and choosing not to get lost. It's a kind of emotional freedom where the world can scream, but inside there is silence. And that deep calm begins to emerge more clearly as you face the source of your emotional patterns. Therefore, the next step is to observe patterns of emotional conditioning. Much of what we feel today is rooted in what we experienced back then. The way we react emotionally, whether we seek recognition or fear rejection, did not come out of nowhere, but was shaped again and again in childhood. A compliment that has become an addiction. A criticism that turned into a trauma. Without realizing it, we carry these models within us as secret codes that define our relationship with the world. Have you ever wondered why certain words influence you more than they should? Or why does someone's silence bother you so much? These intense reactions are often related to old experiences that still resonate with you. It's as if certain situations trigger invisible triggers that are already there, waiting to be activated. And it restricts their emotional freedom. The good news is that trends can be identified and changed. The first step is to observe yourself with curiosity and not with judgment. Pay attention to how you react when you are not recognized, criticized, or ignored. Ask yourself, is it really about the present or am I repeating something from the past? This kind of questioning is powerful. This leaves room for conscious decisions. Practices such as writing an emotional journal, going to therapy, or even talking to people you trust about your reactions can speed up this process. Modern Stoicism also teaches that we can replace our emotional vices with virtues by identifying them. Instead of the poor, it is self-reliance. Instead of waiting, it's acceptance. It is an internal excavation work, but also a reconstruction work. Breaking old patterns does not mean rejecting who you were, but deciding who you want to become. It is an act of emotional courage. And when you start to realize that interpretations shape your pain more than the facts themselves, he is ready for a new kind of freedom. The next step is to understand how interpretation becomes a silent prison. It's not the facts that hurt us, it's the stories we tell about them. Have you ever thought about it? Two people can experience the same situation and react in completely opposite ways. The difference lies in the interpretation. And there is the power or the danger. As Epictetus said, people do not care about things, but about the vision they have of them. Let's take a practical example. Someone doesn't reply to your message. A person thinks he must be busy. Another is already in a whirlwind. They ignored me, they did something wrong, they don't like me. The fact is the same. Suffering changes depending on the meaning that is attributed to it. And often we are adept at building emotional catastrophes into our own heads. What modern Stoicism offers us is simple but profound. Observe your thoughts before you believe them. Not all feelings are a reflection of reality. Sometimes it's just a reflection of your mental pattern. When you start questioning your automatic interpretations, you create a sacred space between the stimulus and the response. And freedom lives in this space. A powerful exercise is to pause and ask yourself every time something affects you emotionally, what else could it mean? This question changes everything. It relieves mental traps and opens up new perspectives. And that's not denial, it's empowerment. You stop being held hostage by emotions and become the author of your own story. Less interpretation, more living. Less judging, more observing. When you master your performance, you don't eliminate the pain, but you prevent it from defining you. And it's that emotional clarity that allows you to take the next step, saving the personal power you may have accidentally relinquished. At some point in your life, you've given someone control over your emotions. Maybe it was to please, to avoid conflict, or simply for fear of losing. The problem is that when we give this power, we put our peace in the hands of others. And living like this is like driving with the steering wheel in someone else's hands, dangerous, unstable, exhausting. Reclaiming personal power is not about being authoritarian or selfish. It's about taking responsibility for how you feel, react, and decide. It's about understanding that no matter how irritated you are by the other person, it's up to you to decide whether to respond with anger or composure. The emotion can even arise, but the answer is up to you. And this awareness is the beginning of true freedom. A practical step. Pay attention to this when you say so-and-so left me like this. Replace it with I was like that when I heard this and that. It seems like a detail, but it changes everything. By using this language, you remind yourself that your emotional response is your own. This does not take away the responsibility of others, but gives them back their prominence. And this return to the center is powerful. This was the beginning of the reconstruction. Philosophically speaking, it is inner sovereignty. It's when you live by your principles and no longer as a reflection of other people's attitudes. Marcus Aurelius did not speak of living according to one's own reason and not according to the impulses of others. In this way, you strengthen yourself. Create a solid foundation that doesn't depend on the weather, the mood of others, or outside applause. Reclaiming one's own power is a silent but transformative act. It's like picking up the keys to a house that has always been yours, but you let other people in. And when the key is back in your hand, the next step is to use it to build something solid, a self-esteem that is born from within and doesn't need an audience. True emotional stability begins when your worth stops being dependent on the gaze of others and begins to have inner roots. It's self-esteem. It's not arrogance, it's not pride, it's the quiet certainty that you're enough, even if no one claps. Imagine a strong tree. It doesn't tremble in the wind because its roots are firm. This is how the value that comes from within works. Many people try to feel valuable by accumulating achievements, likes, or relationships. But all that can disappear. And when your self-esteem is tied to the fleeting, your self-esteem becomes a sandcastle. Stoicism teaches that self-esteem should come from virtue, perseverance, and character, and not from the opinion of others. Seneca would say you are what you do when no one is looking. How can we develop this self-worth? Start by objectively recognizing your qualities. Write down 3 things you respect at home and read them every day. It's not vanity, it's a training in self-awareness. Next, identify your virtues: courage, perseverance, benevolence. What have you cultivated? These are seeds that strengthen your root. Another important point is to protect yourself from environments that undermine the sense of worth. People who only criticize you, who never recognize you, who try to subtly belittle you, all of this undermines your inner foundation. Sometimes protecting self-esteem means opting for silence, distance, or even solitude. And that's okay. Because if you have strong roots, you don't need applause to thrive. If your value is internal, praise becomes a bonus and criticism to learn. Nothing defines you anymore, you define yourself. And it brings with it an enormous lightness. From there, a powerful voice begins to form in you. And it deserves to be heard. Therefore, the next step is to learn to listen to your inner voice. In the midst of the noise of the world, opinions, judgments, expectations, there is one voice we rarely hear: our own. And that's important. A lot. It's that inner voice that knows what makes sense to you, even when everyone else disagrees. The problem is that for fear of making mistakes or not liking, we silence that voice. And it's lost. He loses himself in the sounds, in the should, in the while I. The inner voice does not scream, it whispers. It's that slight discomfort when you deceive yourself. It is a quiet peace if you act sincerely. But if you ignore it for too long, it will get weaker and weaker. And this is where the chronic insecurity, the permanent doubt, the feeling of always being separated from oneself begins. It's not a lack of direction, it's a lack of listening. Are you looking for a simple and powerful exercise? Take 5 minutes a day, without distractions, and ask yourself, what do I really want? How do I really feel? It may seem strange at first, but over time, this practice refines the connection to your essence. And this connection is like a compass, it guides you even in the midst of storms. Philosophically, the Stoics understood it to mean a life in accordance with rational nature, i.e., with reason itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote many of his reflections only for himself, in order to organize his own mind. He understood that true strength comes from within and that trusting one's conscience, not the ego, is an act of courage. When you start to appreciate your own voice, something changes. You'll start making more coordinated decisions, living easier, and building a more authentic life. And it is precisely this authenticity that allows you to transition from automatic impulse to conscious choice. And that's what the next point is about: react or vote. There is a fundamental difference between reacting and voting. The reaction is automatic, instinctive, emotional. The choice is conscious, reflective, mature. When you react, you're usually controlled by unfiltered emotions. But when you choose, you get behind the wheel of your own life. And believe me, this difference changes absolutely everything. How many times have you said or done something in the heat of the moment? And did you regret it afterwards? It's the reaction. It comes quickly, but that's not always the case. The Stoics teach us to create a space between stimulus and reaction. As Epictetus said, between what happens and the way we react, there is freedom. In this space, self-control and true strength are born. In practice, taking a break is a good start. Breathe. Count to 3 before reacting to something that has bothered you. It's not a weakness, it's strategy. This is what transforms impulses into decisions. Over time, this pause becomes a habit, and this habit becomes power. An armored spirit is not one who does not feel, but one who feels. And yet he makes a clear decision. Another useful tool is the diary. Write down your daily reactions and ask yourself, was this answer mine or automatic? Over time, you start to see patterns, and where there are trends, there are opportunities for change. This is how you train the consciousness muscle. Not with magic formulas, but with perseverance and intention. When you become someone who chooses instead of simply reacting, your life ceases to be a reflection of the world and becomes a construct of its own. And this kind of emotional consistency is only possible if you have a clear understanding of what is and isn't in your control. Therefore, the next step is crucial: the distinction between the controllable and the uncontrollable. One of the most liberating lessons of Stoic philosophy is simple and straightforward: stop wasting energy on what is not in your control. It sounds obvious, but most of us do the exact opposite. We suffer because of the behavior of others, because of what could have been, because of what others think. And in doing so, we neglect what we can really change ourselves. Epictetus said that there are only 2 categories: what depends on you and what doesn't. Your actions, thoughts, decisions, and attitudes are in your hands. But the mood of the others, the weather, the past, the external judgment. Insisting on controlling the uncontrollable is like trying to hold water with your hands. And it exhausts, frustrates, paralyzes. A good practice is to create lists. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, write down what is bothering you and mark next to it, can I control it? If the answer is no, let it be. If so, take action. This simple exercise will help you clear your mind and direct your energy to what really matters. It's like adjusting the focus of the camera, everything becomes sharper. The Stoics did not teach passive resignation, but wise action. Marcus Aurelius had to deal with the crises of the empire, but he cultivated discipline and presence. He knew he couldn't change everything around him, but he could be steadfast in what depended on him. This is the basis of peace, not the absence of problems, but the distinction between where to act and where to let go. When you master this separation, you gain a kind of silent power. The mind becomes lighter. The heart, freer. And then you understand that paying attention to everything means giving power to chaos. That is why the next step is essential: learning the art of selection, the art of indifference. Indifference is not contempt in a Stoic context. That's wisdom. It's the ability to choose what your energy deserves and what's not even worth your trouble. In a hyper-connected world where everything requires attention, knowing how to ignore is a superpower. Because not everything is important. And if you make everything a priority, you'll burn out with what you should never have had on your radar. Marcus Aurelius practiced this art in silence. Instead of reacting to all criticism, he turned inwards. Instead of worrying about court rumors, he asked himself, does this affect my virtue? My reason? My mission? If the answer was no, he followed him. It's not cold, it's concentration. It's about filtering out the noise and keeping a clear head. In practice, this can be applied in different ways. Has someone insulted you? Before you shake them off, ask yourself, is this opinion coming from someone whose life you would admire? If not, he may not deserve his suffering. Social networks. Toxic news. Useless discussions. Silence is also about taking care of yourself. Strategic indifference protects your energy. Training this skill begins with a new kind of awareness, what you allow your mind to shape your emotional state. Therefore, it is more effective to protect attention than to try to control emotions. If you don't expose yourself to what causes you to get off the right path, you won't have to work as hard to get back to the center. The art of indifference prepares the ground for true equilibrium. A balance that does not freeze, but also does not sway in the wind. And it is this balance that gives way to the next virtue, to be solid as a rock, but still to be human, that is, to be a rock, not ice. There is a fine line between being emotionally strong and emotionally closed. Many people, when they try to protect themselves, turn to ice. They block feelings, avoid connections, and become unapproachable. But that is not the Stoic ideal. The suggestion is not to harden until it is broken, but to strengthen until it is maintained. It's like being like a rock, solid, present, but able to feel. Being a rock means having emotional stability even in the midst of chaos. It's about listening to criticism without breaking down, but also accepting a compliment without losing yourself. It's about keeping your heart open and not letting uncontrolled emotions dictate your actions. True balance is to feel everything, but to be guided by reason, not by impulses. In practice, this leads to simple attitudes: listening instead of reacting. Breathe before you react. Choose to be present, but not soak up everything around you. A good example of this is the behavior of Epictetus, who retained his unshakable dignity despite his slavery. He did not let suffering embitter him, but made him wiser. If you tend to withdraw for fear of hurting yourself, try small opening steps with awareness. Share something with someone you trust. Allow yourself to feel without fully identifying with the emotion. It is not a matter of freezing, but of shaping one's resistance wisely. You don't have to be cold-blooded to be strong. When you learn to be rock, not ice, your presence increases in weight. People feel his steadfastness, but also his humanity. It makes you trustworthy, respectable, and most importantly, truthful. And with this solid foundation, you'll be able to build even freer relationships. 'Cause now you're ready to love. Without this being necessary. To love without necessity is not indifference, it is maturity. It's when you decide to be with someone, not because you're missing something, but because they're overcrowded. You love because you want to, not because you depend on it. This kind of love is rare, but powerful. It is born from a free soul, from a whole heart. And the best thing is that it doesn't hold, but expands. When you are emotionally dependent, love becomes attachment. You demand, you get paid, you get hurt easily. When there is emotional self-sufficiency, love flows. There is no fear of loss, because there is no hole to fill. You don't get less by being alone, or more by being with someone. You are simple, and that's enough. The Stoics considered love to be something associated with virtue. To love virtuously means to respect the other as he or she is, without trying to mold him or her according to his or her desires. It's not about using the other person as an emotional crutch, but as a travel companion. Marcus Aurelius, although he was emperor, valued simple relationships in which respect and freedom coexist. In practice, start by observing: are you in a relationship to share or fill a void? Do you love someone, or do you try to be loved at all costs? This awareness is already changing the dynamics. To love unnecessarily is not coldness, it is lightness. It's about knowing that love is a choice, not a necessity. And when you love freely, you also free yourself from the cruelest prison of all the expectation that the other will complete you. From then on, the frustration loses its power. And that brings us to the next crucial step: understanding how expectations cause frustration. Most frustrations don't come from what the other person did, but from what you expected them to do. We create mental scenarios: how people should behave, what they should say, how they should treat us. And if not, the disappointment comes. But the truth is that no one is obligated to follow the script you wrote in silence. Epictetus warned: if you want to be invincible, do not get involved in disputes whose outcome does not depend on you. This is especially true for expectations. Expecting someone to understand you without you speaking, to always act with empathy, to never make mistakes, is to demand perfection from the world when even we don't offer it to it. And that keeps us trapped in an eternal cycle of frustration. Would you like a concrete approach to get out of it? Business expectations of observation. Instead of expecting something, you naturally see what the other has to offer. Accept reality as it is, not as you would like it to be. It is not a matter of passively accepting everything, but of acting according to what is, not according to what one has idealized. It's emotional realism. You can continue to relate to yourself, take care of yourself, be generous, but without invisible attachments. Lightness comes when you stop demanding that the world follow your secret plans. Life becomes simpler, more flowing, more sincere. And then you discover a rare strength, one that remains stable even if others don't meet your expectations. This strength has a name: unwavering courage. When you stop expecting from others what you have already found within yourself, frustration loses its place. And with that, you enter a new phase of emotional sovereignty. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next topic: unwavering courage. Imagine that you have such a solid foundation within you that neither the highest praise exalts you too much, nor the worst criticism belittles you. It's about having unwavering courage. This is the moment when your self-esteem stops being an emotional yo-yo thrown by the hands of others and becomes a solid rock built on principles, choices, and inner clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote: when you are afflicted by something external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to the evaluation you make of it, and that is in your power. The logic is the same for personal value. If you feel belittled by a comment, it's because you're still looking for validation at some level. But when you know who you are, other people's words lose their power to redefine you. Cultivating this value takes practice. A powerful exercise is to make a list of what makes you valuable in your own eyes. Not titles, not achievements, but attitudes, virtues, actions that are in line with what you believe. Read this list again and again if you feel shaken by criticism. It serves as an anchor, as a reminder of your being, which is not shaped by opinions. Another important point: you don't have to prove yourself. When it's internal, it looks effortless. His attitude, his calmness, his coherence speak louder than any speech. And the most interesting thing is that the less you look for validation, the more naturally it comes. People feel when someone is whole inside. With unwavering courage, you live from the inside out, not the other way around. And in doing so, one experiences something rare: an inner sovereignty that is undisturbed by the outside world. And with this silent power, we take the next step to live according to our own principles, not in the eyes of the masses. Inner sovereignty means living in accordance with your principles, even when the whole world seems to be moving in the opposite direction. It's about having the courage to stay the course, even when you're being questioned, ignored, or judged. It's not about being rebellious, it's about staying true to yourself. And it is this fidelity that maintains true emotional freedom. Imagine living every day without needing the approval of the crowd. Without worrying about whether you will like your selection, without shaping yourself in such a way that you belong. It's not about closing your ears to the world, it's about learning to filter. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul is colored by the color of its thoughts." When you feed your mind with the truths of others, you end up moving away from your essence. The practice of inner sovereignty begins with small decisions. Make a conscious decision, not on a whim. Act in accordance with your values, even when no one is watching. Say no if you have to, even if it disappoints someone. Most importantly, accept the consequences with equanimity. Because if you live consistently, discomfort also has a purpose. A valuable instrument for strengthening this sovereignty is the establishment of one's own rules of life. Small personal commitments like, "I'm not going to justify myself for being who I am," or "I'm not going to let the fear of rejection stop me from saying what I think." Daily repetition creates an internal structure that supports your emotional independence. Inner sovereignty means walking steadfastly, even when the earth shakes. It's about staying whole in a world that's always trying to break you. And more than that, it's about freeing yourself from something that holds many people captive: the opinions of others. And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the next topic. Other people's opinions are just noise. Other people's opinions can seem deafening until you realize it's just noise. Noise from outside. And like all noise, it only affects you if you pay attention to it. How many times have you stopped acting, taking a stand, or showing your being for fear of what they might think? How many ideas were discarded before they were born because of an imaginary judgment? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You will soon forget everything. Soon everyone will forget you." This sentence is not pessimistic, it is liberating. It reminds us that most opinions are fleeting, and unimportant in the grand scheme of life. And yet we give them enormous weight. We let ourselves be guided, stopped, shaped by them. And with that, we lose the opportunity to live our truth. Stoic practice invites us to go back to basics: what is really important. Who do you want to be? If you stay true to that, there can be criticism, yes. But there will also be peace. Because true peace comes from within, not from the approval of others. When you understand this, you start to hear opinions as if they were radio stations. Some you listen to, others you let go. Do you want to do sports? Whenever you are moved by a comment, ask yourself this question: does this person know my journey? Do they experience the dilemmas I face? If not, your opinion may say more about them than it does about you. And if so, it's always up to you to decide what you're going to eat. It's an emotional filter. This is the applied term. If other people's opinions are just background noise, you're moving easily. It acts autonomously. Be creative with courage. And this leads to something great: the development of a lifestyle based on the daily practice of emotional freedom. That's what we're going to look at in the next step: the daily practice of emotional freedom. Emotional freedom is not a permanent state that you conquer and that's it. It's an exercise. A daily workout. Just as the body needs movement to stay strong, the mind needs to be awake to stay free. And that freedom starts with the small choices: what you think, what you allow, how you react to the world around you. You don't have to live like a monk to cultivate that. The practice can begin with a simple morning ritual: 5 minutes of silence before looking at the phone. Or a moment of reflection in the evening: how did I react today? What can I do differently tomorrow? These pauses create space between stimuli and their reactions. And in this space lies their power. Another valuable practice is the Stoic diary. It doesn't have to be complex. Write about an emotional challenge of the day and reflect: was it in my control? Was I guided by emotion or by reason? This conscious writing helps you recognize patterns, let go of what is weighing you down, and reinforce what you are empowering. It is a practical, accessible, and transformative self-knowledge. And remember, emotional freedom doesn't mean being immune to pain, but knowing how to deal with it without breaking down. It means feeling everything, but not letting yourself be carried away by anything. It stands firm, even when life tries to throw you off balance. Like a tree that sways in the wind but does not lose its roots. It is the silent force. It's maturity in action. With this continuous practice, you become an observer of your own soul. Learn to control your reactions and not let them dominate you. And this is exactly where the most important decision of all lies, which closes this cycle of self-control. The choice is always yours. In the end, it all boils down to election. You can choose to react or reflect. You can choose to go with the flow of others or listen to your inner voice. You can choose to live chained to the opinions of others or walk gently in your own truth. It's not easy, but it's easy. And it's in your hands, every day, every little moment. The Stoics tried to be unshakable, not through pride, but through wisdom. They have understood that true power is not in controlling the world, but in controlling how one positions oneself before it. And this awareness changes everything. Life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a field of conscious choices. You're welcome. This is true freedom. You can get started right away. You don't have to wait to become a master of discipline or serenity. Start where you are, with what you have. Recognize a pattern, challenge a reaction, solve an expectation. One step at a time. Because every great transformation begins with a small but firm decision. So I leave you with a question: who would you be if you stopped living for the approval of others? And if you really listened to your own voice, what would you say today? If these questions concern you, very good. It is a sign that something is awakening in you. And this awakening is only the beginning of a lighter, firmer, more of your life. If this content appealed to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here we continue this path together, with wisdom, courage and truth.